Folks, we need to talk about the Morgan Rielly incident in the Sens and Leafs game that resulted in major controversy and likely a major suspension. We got some recent news regarding Morgan Rielly's future suspension that doesn't look all too good. And there could be a situation where it's 10 plus games when it's all said and done. But how many games will Morgan Rielly end up being suspended for? How many games should he be suspended for? And make sure you watch till the end as well, because we're going to talk about how this affects the entire NHL and already is affecting the league in a major way. And of course, hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey breakdowns just like this all throughout the season, because you won't want to miss a thing. But before we get into the full breakdown, let's first talk about great friends of the channel and today's sponsor in Sleeper Fantasy. You guys should know by now, but if you don't, Sleeper Fantasy is the best way to turn your hockey knowledge into real money. All you gotta do to win is pick more or less on different NHL players every single night to make your daily picks. For tonight's games, I'm going a little bit simple here, just two picks here. Blake Coleman, higher than 0.5 points. Same thing with Jonathan Marchessault. Both of these players have been on fire, especially in Coleman's case with the Flames looking really good recently. I think they're going to continue that. Coleman also being a part of it. We went a little bit fancy in the last one with Jared Tenorti, higher than 1.5 blocks, and then he ended up being injured for the game. So we're going to go simple here and see how it goes. But make sure you guys join me on Sleeper Fantasy to make your own daily NHL picks. Go to the description, click on the link, and use promo code GRAV on your first deposit, and you get up to a $500 deposit match. An incredible offer by Sleeper that you won't want to miss, folks. And thank you to Sleeper Fantasy for sponsoring today's video. Now, folks, let's finally talk about the Morgan Rielly and Rielly Greig situation and what we could see with a Morgan Rielly suspension. And I gotta say, I might have a little bit of a hot take on this whole situation that I really haven't seen expressed many other places. Now, when we look at this humongous Leafs versus Sens game and just how much chaos there were, it really reminded me of a time in the early 2000s where we actually saw some passion and hatred between the Leafs and the Sens. Back then, both teams were actually good at the same time, and we saw so many playoff series, so many amazing moments, so many big brawls between the two. But really, since 2004, their last playoff matchup, we've seen the Battle of Ontario kind of dwindle in passion and pure hatred. But this last game against the Leafs versus the Sens rekindled that fire. But with pretty much every Leafs fan under the sun at the Canadian Tire Center, the Ottawa Senators came out with a resounding win, and with an empty netter, Ridly Greig would slap shot it into the net. Oh dear, oh no, oh geez. So it went from a pretty decent, pretty solid game, went from the biggest story in hockey. This man right here, Ridly Greig, throughout his junior career, for the NHL career, has lived on getting under the skin of his opponents, and that's what he's done constantly. Being a first-round draft pick, working his way up from the WHL to the AHL and then the NHL this year in a full big role. You can see in 38 games, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. He's been really solid as a rookie. But that ability to be a rookie, to be in the minds of his opponents so much already, is pretty special. I love this angle of the play. You can see Ridly Greig just not really expecting too much after the goal, but then Morgan Rielly just comes in and mauls him. But again, that close-up is pretty brutal. You can see Greig tries to block this thing a little bit with the glove, but not really too successful there. Morgan Rielly just gets a piece of his head there. Now, I've seen a lot of people debating, what side are you on? Morgan Rielly, Ridly Greig, who do you go for? Who do you choose? And I gotta say, out of these two and what we saw in that Ottawa and Toronto game, I think I do lean towards Ridly Greig's side here. This is something that Greig has done absolutely perfectly. Not only has he gotten under the skin of Toronto, but he's now suspended one of their best players, their bestie, for a long time. At least what it's looking like right now. What Greig was able to accomplish in one slap shot into an empty net is pretty incredible. Not only does he become a hero in Sens land for that type of play, he also lays the trap for Morgan Rielly, who completely bid on it. But this leads me to my controversial opinion on this thing, which I don't think many people share out there, but that's that I love everything about this. I love that the Battle of Ontario is finally back. This is a rivalry that we haven't seen at this level in what feels like so long. And the fact that we saw so much hatred in one play, so much battle in one play. This sport is about entertainment, is it not? And that was one of the most entertaining things we have seen in this entire friggin' season. I love that Ridly Greig did that. I love that he did that in front of the home crowd. I love that he did that for like 75,000 billion Leafs fans in that stadium. I love that he reignited this Battle of Ontario hatred. That's something you do when it's an actual rivalry, and Ridly Greig was treating it like one. That's what we need more of in the NHL. I've talked about so much how much rivalries in this league have just gone down the drain. We don't have any rivalries anymore. Nobody hates each other anymore. But finally, we see a reignition of that, and it's just such a breath of fresh air. I didn't get to experience early 2000s hockey, late 90s hockey, where these rivalries were life and death, man. If I had to go on any side, I would lean Greig's just because I think an empty net shot is a lot less offensive than a cross-check to the head. But at the same time, you can't blame Morgan Rielly for going after him, trying to create something. I would have preferred maybe just a slight scrum, but if it was, we wouldn't be making a video about it, would we? It has been such a big story for such a long time regarding this Leafs team, and especially that core four, that they don't have the anger, they don't have the relentlessness that they need to have. They don't insert themselves into play. They aren't as physical as they need to be. But Morgan Rielly showed that they can be that, and really, in a rare situation, went kind of over the line. But now let's talk about Morgan Rielly and the suspension that he could end up facing, and talking about what we have heard, what could happen next, and how many games he'll ultimately end up getting. Now, we got the confirmation here from NHL Player Safety the day after the game, saying that Toronto's Morgan Rielly has been offered an in-person hearing for cross-checking Ottawa's Ridly Greig, and then talking about from NHL Player Safety that the Tuesday afternoon meeting will decide his fate. Elliotte Friedman also says, pretty ominously, official announcement, this gives the option of 6 games or more, not guaranteed, but the option is there, and Elliotte Friedman is right. If it was just a Zoom meeting, then it would have been 5 games or less, and that would have been the limit on it. It couldn't have gone past 5 games. But now, with it being an in-person hearing, it could be anything. Now, NHL Player Safety sometimes follows their own rules. Sometimes it can be pretty wacky, but usually they make an example of somebody, and then in future cases, we'll see that kind of be around the same range. One incident that I've seen a lot of people compare this one to is actually David Perron's 6-game suspension. It was pretty crazy with Dylan Larkin basically just lying on the ice, and you could see with David Perron around here, he's able to see that Larkin's just, he looks honestly unconscious. He looks like he's been knocked out cold by Artem Zub, and even though Artem Zub comes up and it's like, hey, we need to stop this play, David Perron goes right after him, cross-checks him right in the head pretty unsuspectfully, and takes him down. Now, this is obviously a much different situation, with David Perron thinking that one of his teammates was practically dead in comparison to Morgan Rielly just doing this right after an empty net goal by Rielly Greig. But at the same time, the actual infraction, that cross-check the head, was pretty similar, in the similar positions as well, with David Perron going right up to the head, same thing with Morgan Rielly as well. But this situation does set the precedent of 6 games for an unsuspecting player getting cross-checked in the head, and that is going to be the situation that the NHL looks at the most. To me, I think if you're going to put Perron suspension at 6 games, Rielly should probably be more, but I think at this point, it pretty much confirms that it's going to be 6 games at least. But here's the thing, in terms of the player they were hitting, it's much different situations, with a player showboating in Ridly Greig's case, and in Artem Zub's case, you know, there was an infraction there. There was Dylan Larkin laying on the ice. Standing up for an injured player is a lot different than standing up for an empty net goal from a slap shot. And I think the NHL is going to look at that situation and likely suspend Morgan Rielly a lot more. I think they're going to want to cut down on players just going after guys just because they celebrated and showboating, because, let's be honest, again, I think the NHL should try to go in more of an entertainment direction, and protecting players celebrating might be the way to go there. I think the NHL might look at it as going after a player, cross-checking a player in the head for the way they celebrated, as a much bigger infraction in this case, and honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if that ends up being the case. Now, there was a really interesting rumor as well coming from Jeff Marek and Elliotte Friedman from the Jeff Marek Show, talking about Morgan Rielly suspensions, and with Elliotte Friedman, what he's hearing right now. And the quote said, I had people say to me that they couldn't believe it was a hearing, and I also had people say to me that he should get 20 games. So we have Elliotte Friedman also talking about people on the inside, talking about this situation and how they thought that Morgan Rielly should get suspended for 20 games. I mean, we have been talking about 6, 8, 10 games before, but 20 would be unreal. But again, for the NHL, it might be about setting that example, so maybe 20 games is in the cards. I don't know if I quite agree with that much, but it could happen here. Now, here's the thing. In David Perron's case, he got 6 games and was a first-time offender, which I think is maybe some of the reason why he only got 6 games. In Morgan Rielly's case as well, he would be a first-time offender if he were to get a suspension, so that might play a part here. He might get 10 games, maybe a little bit more than that, but also the fact that this is his first time really doing anything like this might lean him back towards the 6-game mark. That is always something to consider, because the NHL Player Safety really does weigh heavily on first-time offenders compared to guys that have done things before. I mean, Tom Wilson is a great example of that. If Morgan Rielly had another suspension for another cross-checking before, honestly, 10 games would have been a lock. But I do think realistically, we likely see it around the 6 to 8 game mark. Maybe it's able to reach 10, but I would assume maybe 6 to 8 games would be the most realistic. Again, especially considering David Perron's was 6, and I think it'll probably go around that range. Honestly, the biggest shame out of everything in this is that this is the last Senators versus Leafs matchup of the year. Imagine we had something in April at the start of things, like the last couple of games of the season for the Leafs, and we had another Leafs and Senators matchup. It would have been absolutely must-watch TV. But still, next year, when we see Greig, when we see Rielly back, that is going to be chaotic to see. And I'm just glad that the Battle of Ontario is back, that we have a rivalry we can look forward to for next year. Hopefully the Senators will be in a much better position next year as well, and not as embarrassing of a team. Obviously, one man can dream. But at the same time, it feels like this rivalry is finally reignited, and we finally have something to look forward to, man, which is amazing. But this situation has been absolutely crazy, and I know a ton of opinions have been flown out there, but please, I want to know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this whole Greig and Rielly situation? Whose side are you on, Greig's or Rielly's? And how many games do you think Rielly will end up receiving? How many games do you think he should end up receiving? Let us know all your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for more breakdowns just like this. And of course, share the video with all the hockey fans, all the Leafs, Sens fans you guys know online, and click on this card for all my tournament content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great hockey day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.